That's right. Live on Chicano Tube, live on Chicano Street, the voice for Chicanos. We're back on the calles one more time, the YouTube calles one more time. And I'm going to bring on an hermano of mine right now. Before we do that and before we get to the introductions, gracias to all the day oneers. You already know who you are. Without me saying it, why? Because you got my chip. Ya estamos así. I appreciate you more than you know. Gracias to everyone in the members only, who I call the backbone of the community. A lot of people ask me, how do I see the fights? The members only. They get to see all the head up fades. Not the talking about each other, but the people that say, let's settle it in the ring once and for pinche all. So right now I'm going to go ahead and bring on Wayward Son. Cabrones, but let me go through some formalities before that. Gracias a everyone in the members only. You already know who it is. Everyone that tuned in to Las Rolas Mexicanas. It was Cinco de Mayo, just this past Sunday. I was on Story and King. I was on Story and King for Cinco de Mayo. So it was a good one. It was a good time. I had a blast. I ran into, I don't know, I must have took like 10, maybe like 10 selfies. Hold on, I'm gonna shoot an email también real quick. Oh, there it is. No, it's this one. Let me shoot an email real quick. Yeah, so everyone that I ran into out on Story and King, hey, San Jose is full of raza, man. I already know this, cabrones. Let me go and send that link, my brother, Wayward Son. All right. I sent that link, Carnal Wayward Son, to your email inbox. However you want to open it up through the internet, Carnal. You could open it up through the YouTube chat, which is through any browser. But I just emailed it just so you can have it in your email, whatever it is it takes. So gracias to all the day oneers. We're live. We're going to go ahead and get into a lot of topics tonight because this is my bread and butter for the Pinchy podcast, just to let you know. If anything, we're going to come on YouTube Landia, and we're going to kick some knowledge. We're going to kick some history that maybe you never heard of on another channel. Well, it's all good. At the end of the day, it really is all entertainment at the end of the day. So I hope it's entertaining as we go maybe at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half, respecting everyone's time, at least an hour or an hour and a half. Gracias, though. Let me go ahead and see some comments here. Cultura Cafe, that's right, my boy. I appreciate you. Kilvurras, that's right. I appreciate you for tapping in. Orale E-Rod 209. I know you came in here, cabron. Anyone that got any questions too that you want to go ahead and drop on there, now would be a good opportune time because we're going to be covering topics such as like ancestry, native, native history, DNA, DNA lineage. I thought about a couple of these things. And of course, the indigenous, Spanish, Mexican history. Those are the traditional topics that we're never going to go away from right here. Just there's a plethora. There's a plethora of what we talk about here. Don't forget to hit that like, though, and hit that subscribe. And don't forget to hit that pinche bell and hit that all button. Before we go ahead and bring on Wayward Son, though, let me touch on a couple other things that people had sent me in my inbox. I said I hadn't been live in about 2 or 3 days, and now we're going to get into it, cabrones. So some people have sent me some clips. The first clip someone sent me was of Norby's, and it was an edited video. And I don't know when they sent it to me. I think it was like around a dinner time, like a couple days ago. It's already been a couple days. I'm sorry with my dates and my times, and siempre algo está pasando, you know. But anyways, this is what I wanted to say about that. Do people really want to start resorting to putting out edited clips? The same people that scream from the mountaintop, we don't want to hear no edited clips, no edited clips. Do they want to one more time let edited clips float out there? The way you do that is by doing one or promoting one, right? So anyways, as far as that situation is, absolutely, they edited it. That clip is 100% edited. Yes, it is, because he said brown, he said black in the same sentence. Brown and black. Really convenient, though. Really convenient when you just edit out the brown. Really, really convenient. Guess what? YouTube is a dangerous place, cabrones. They'll throw jackets on you real quick. They'll try to get you caught up in traps, and they'll put traps in your way, and landmines and pits. They'll try to do you dirty and set you up, and it is what it is, right? You got to have thick skin. Let's just say that. You got to have thick skin to be on YouTube. So that was the first thing I wanted to mention, that one. As I was watching Tony A with Rhodium Radio. I'll tell you what, man. Rhodium Radio, straight up, I think they have the best chat, the most lit chat in all of, at least the Chicano genre. Those are the the chat over there at Tony at Rhodium Radio is undefeated, man. Undefeated. You go on there and you see comments like this, that mole is browner than him. This and this, and oh my gosh, man. I should have sent Tony a text. Maybe if he sees this video, cabron, you got the most lit chat in the Chicano genre. I'll tell you like that. That's right, my brother from another mother, mi hermano, who's into cultura. We could even talk about that avatar. If you want to talk about that avatar with Wayward Son, cabron, he's creeping in right now. He's going to creep in right now. Tú sabes que yo sé, pero yo sé que tú sabes también, cabrón. Yo sé que tú sabes también, cabrón. What's cracking, gente? Orale, that's right, my boy Aguilar, man. What's up with you? I remember my boy Aguilar, not too many shows ago, right? You won, was the Chicano flag or the Chicano 2 beanie? We got to do another giveaway, gente. We've been lacking on that, man. We're going to crack 11K, 12K, 15K. We got to do way more giveaways than we're doing. We're going to slow motion with those. I just got to get it from the merch store and then just put it out for the people. And then we'll put it out there. You know? One of the shorts, I want to mention this also as well. See, my brother Wayward Son, mi hermano, one of the shorts that he recently posted, he didn't even know that, you know, spitting that what they don't teach us and borderline controversial things. I mean, it's just the internet. People are van a opinar de todo. By spitting those things, he said he did a video, and you know, he's a builder. So estaba aventando drywall or framing or something. He did a video, just coming on TikTok, did a video, and came back after like 3-4 hours. I don't know if he had a lunchtime or the end of the day, and had seen like 10,000. It said 10,000 engagements or impressions. Why? Because you come on here and you speak that knowledge that's controversial. It's controversial when you start talking about colonization. It's controversial when you start talking about raza. It's controversial when you start talking about que no eres esto, no eres esto, because obviously that's it. And it is at the end of the day, just, so another reason to go ahead and put labels on things and separate things. That's been happening since the beginning of time. That's right, Farmero. I appreciate you, my boy. That's right, Burques in the casa. That's right, Mike's World. I see you. Way. That's right, Mike's World's in the casa. Anthony Reese. I know. I thought OG stood for the old generation. Well, you know what? It's funny. They throw that term around now real loosely, cabron. Real loosely. Where I'm sure they're just saying it like left and right. Instead, if it was something that, at one point, people were going into that role. Why? Because they just been their generations in the neighborhood. They grew up in the neighborhood. They've been there all of su infancia, their childhood. Those streets know who they are. And unfortunately, a lot of them spend a lot of time behind the walls. And then they go from the juvenile system to the adult system, cabron. And you don't have to be at the adult system. You see the pendejos on the internet that only stayed in the juvenile system. I mean, you see how they're acting? Man, I wish I had my sampler on right now. Oh, that's right, hermano. Go ahead and hit the link. I emailed it to you too. Do you want? Is that easier for you, hermano? Hit the link through the email, cabron. I'm sorry. And dispensa, I didn't mean it like that. Oh, you know what? Aquí lo voy a poner también. I'm sorry, hermano. We could have even did it like this too. My apologies. Ahí está también, hermano. The once a year Mexican short that mi hermano Wayward Son. I gotta ask him about that because again. Is he not making sense? Is what's being said not the truth? They're not teaching culture anymore. And what's happened from not teaching culture? You have a whole generation that now we're calling no sabo kids. And I'm not going to be the parent of a pinche no sabo kid. I'm not. My kids are going to remember, at least give them my memories of caminando en el rancho, caminando por los cerros, ordeñando vacas. I wasn't brave enough. I got to keep this real. I wasn't brave enough to do crazy stuff like jump on a toro, and the dude the bull has like 6 feet horns on both sides. Okay, I wasn't, and I would have younger cousins brincándose, and I said, no, you know what? They know you, cabrón, because you see them every day. I'm not doing that. But those are the fondest memories that I'm gonna have. Everything surrounding a beautiful Catholic church. Con una plaza ahí en medio de toda la ranchería. Siempre hay una plaza en centro y todo el camino que va alrededor de toda la ranchería, which is all properties. So they're all ranches. Houses, yes, but Mexicans, we're going to call it ranchos. We're going to call it because it has in the back agricultura, tiene color. You see what I'm saying? And so those are always going to be the fondest memories. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce an hermano of mine who I highly appreciate him coming on the platform one more time that you are waiting for. Mi hermano, Wayward Son, I appreciate you. ¿Cómo estás?
How you doing? Doing good.
Yo sé que estás cansado at the end of the day trabajando.
Yeah, I hope you can't hear all there's some background music. These dudes out here outside this, because I'm in a motel. I went from Nacogdoches. Currently, I'm in Denison, Texas, just about an hour outside of Dallas.
Absolutely not. They can't even hear that, hermano. So don't worry about that. I thank you again. I have to tell you this, hermano. People were wanting me to bring you back again. They wanted you to come back soon. And what a fitting time. We just passed Cinco de Mayo right now. And so I appreciate your time again. That information that you give is the information they don't teach here in the educational system. It's from experiences de lo que tú sabes. And here we like to spread cultura, hermano, because if not, you start seeing these people say, I identify as. Yep. And again, these are just my opinions. No guests of mine coming on here ever. These are opinions. When I speak, it's just my opinions. They start talking about they identify as, or they turn into the last short that I shared from you. I had to reshare it, hermano. I had to reshare it, and I had to title it "The Once a Year Mexican." Can you elaborate one more time on what you saw or what you see as a wave every single pre-Cinco de Mayo, Cinco de Mayo? What is the culture like in the U.S. about that?
That's I got a lot of hate back on it, but it's just, I mean, we see that. You see it every year. These so-called Mexican Americans walk through this life here in the United States. gravitating towards, the nationalistic identity that they fall under being American. And, them same people that celebrated Cinco de Mayo just these couple of days past, they're going to be popping fireworks on the 4th of July coming up. The exact same people. And it's like, they're Mexican for that day. For that day, se bajan el coconut. They let down the coconut and pick up the nopal. But after that day, they're waving that American flag, and it's just sad to see. They forget about who they are. They forget about their roots. They only try to reconnect to those roots whenever there's tequila available.
Hermano, when people hear things on the internet like this, it's they like to get engaged on it because everyone has an opinion nowadays, and it's the internet, so that's what makes things get boosted up, right? In the algorithms is by people engaging. I was telling the story. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said you had just came on to TikTok, did a video, took a break, came back, didn't know that you had a ton of messages because the things that you were saying aren't commonly spoken.
Absolutely. This was about, I guess, about a year ago. I had made a single video, and I was at work, and I just, it was lunchtime, so I took a break, and I was scrolling through TikTok, and I saw this video where this Mexicana from here, from the United States, was telling Mexicans from Mexico to go back to Mexico, and it just kind of, it rubbed me the wrong way. So I just made a quick little video, posted a video response to her, and I picked up within 2 days, 3 days, I picked up over 6,000 followers, and that video has since gotten like over 300 and something thousand likes, and it's gotten a lot of hate, but it's gotten a lot of love. But one of the biggest things that came from that was the question that I get in almost all of my videos, and that motivates me to keep speaking, is this: I didn't know that. I learned something new today. And it blew me away that so few people actually knew about some of the things that I was speaking on. And all they were palabras that we take for being Spanish, or utensils that we use, like palabras like, utensils like mocajete in a comal. Those aren't Mexican, what we classify as Mexican. Those aren't Spanish. Those are indigenous utensils that we use. Foods like tamales, pozole, atole. All of those are indigenous foods. Palabras like coyote, guajolote. These are indigenous words. They're not Spanish words. But so many people, we've been brought up, not necessarily to, it's not that we are being taught these things, it's just that they're not being handed down in a way that keeps us connected to that culture. We just find them out later. We use them. We use the comal. We eat tamales. We talk, cacahuate. We say a lot of indigenous words, but we aren't told that these are indigenous. They don't make that designation. We just take it as being Spanish.
That's right. It's crazy you said that on how you started the whole doing videos, no más just seeing someone say, hey, go back to Mexico. I was doing a live a few months ago, hermano, and there was a situation. Have you ever heard about the situation with a group called the Justice 8?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I had someone calling on a live. I think I was doing the Chicano hour that I do every 2 weeks with my wife. And I think it was her live, but I could be wrong. The executive producer, my wife, she's watching, but I could be wrong. But I had someone call in because the Justice 8 went to her house and they kind of did a protest right outside her house, but scared her because, some people were pushing and shoving and getting really loud on her lawn. She called in because she said the same thing. She told somebody to go back to Mexico, pero llegaron a su casa. And they were out there protesting. Those Justice 8 got arrested because they say they have felonies on them with video and surveillance. At the end of the day, it could be just someone's agenda. Just get them off the street, and they're going to be off the street because they control the paper and the pens.
Absolutely.
Mi hermano. So gracias. So yeah, I was telling you about the once a year short, but we'll get past all that. Mi hermano, you have a lot of Chicano history. I just went to a wake the other day of a close friend of mine whose father had the testimony that he didn't teach his children Spanish because when he came over here, era a Chicano él, and he served in Vietnam. He said they were segregated and everything that was going on back then. he didn't want his kids to experience the same thing by teaching them Spanish. And that's the reason que son, super pochos and they never knew the Spanish language. Have you ever heard about that? I thought you said someone in
That's
your
a
family served in the war también.
that's a common story. It's a common story with a lot of people that we classify as Mexican Americans. My father was fluent in Spanish, but I never heard him speak a word of Spanish until I was about 17. And I didn't even know he knew Spanish. And the reason I heard him is because he was speaking to my grandmother, who speaks nothing but Spanish. She doesn't speak English. And that's when I heard him actually, speak Spanish. Now, when a lot more Mexicans started coming to Dallas from Mexico, and I would get into, I would interact with them. And because I couldn't speak Spanish or spoke very little, I was looked down upon. I wasn't Mexican enough. And they would call me pocho. They'd tell me, no hablas en español? ¿Cuál clase de mexicano eres tú? What kind of Mexican are you? You don't speak Spanish. And my response was always the same. And they didn't like that response. My response was, before Hernan Cortez, none of my people spoke Spanish. And they didn't understand that too much. And I'm like, you hated on me because I speak a different foreign language than the foreign language you speak. Yes, I speak only English, and that is a foreign language. But you speak Spanish. That is a foreign language. So you're gonna hate on me because I speak a different foreign language than you. You need to actually go back and study your history and research what it is that you're getting those emotions from, and coming to me sideways about a language that belongs to neither one of us.
That's not our language. When you trace it back to the indigenous side, because we're Spanish and we're indigenous. There was a podcast I heard the other day, someone call in and someone gave this comment. I wanted to get your thoughts on on this idea. Would have the indigenous countries, everything, the continent of America, would they have been better off without the Spanish Inquisition and the colonization?
Absolutely. See, people get stuck. And there was a little experiment that I did in a live not too long ago. I asked people to imagine an indigenous person, imagine a Native American, and tell me. And I'm gonna go ahead and do it with you. Picture a Native American.
Okay.
What do you see in your mind?
Okay. I see darker skin, hardly no hair, longer hair up here, and the certain features on the face.
How was he dressed?
Dang, like skins, animal
What do-
skins.
okay, now picture a white man.
Okay.
Tell me what you see when you picture a white man.
Whether it's a rugged guy out in the country, unless you're talking about French and Europeans, because
Let's say
Europeans,
British. Let's just say British. An American.
Brit,
An American.
okay, they're gonna have garments. They're gonna have garments. They're tailored. They're more fabric. La vista es una cosa que les importa. So they're gonna have like fine linens.
Okay. See, when we think about Native American, we think about our people. We always think about the past. They're always stuck in the past, in our memory. That's the view that we have. And when we think about a white T person, a white person, we always think about them in the present, like having a three-piece suit and that top dude in the job and everything else. We always see our people in the past as if we wouldn't have advanced from that time period to now. Even though when the white man first arrived here in these territories, we were more advanced in some ways than even they were. We were cleaner. Everything was. Hernan Cortez, if you read the actual writings of Hernan Cortez, they were blown away by Tenochtitlan Mexico. They couldn't believe how beautiful it was and how big it was. They had, the way the water was, the water that they had, the systems that they had to bring water in, and everything that they were doing there. They were advanced to their eyes. Yes, they had different kinds of weapons. They didn't have gunpowder and things of that nature. But as far as the way they bathed and cleaned themselves, the way they cleaned, everything there, everything was organized. They had people picking up trash in the streets, cleaning the streets. They had aqueducts, and they were advanced for their time period. And so if they wouldn't have interfered with them, they would have advanced even further than that because they were already more advanced in some ways than the white man who got here.
So what really it is, it's the information that's only put out there, right? That makes it seem the opposite. When in nature, your opinion, you're like, it was already an advanced civilization, kind of like Egypt, and would have had great advances without the help of anyone else. Not saying different countries don't add to, different flavors or bring different things, but just like you said, would we have been better off? I mean, but what about this end on the other side of the coin, pues? Then the raza doesn't get created y no hay Mexico.
Right, but we would all still be, and see, that's the thing that people like, because I know a few content creators who are like, well, if it wasn't for this, we wouldn't be where we are. But here's the thing. This is the thing that I don't understand when people say that. Is that so? You're telling me that it was a positive thing for my ancestors, your ancestors, to be subjugated, colonized, raped, murdered, um, forced into slavery, into bondage. If you look back at the history of what they actually did here, let's just take Christopher Columbus and the Taínos. And do you know that they were forced to bring gold? There was a certain amount of gold that they had to bring to Christopher Columbus. And if they didn't meet that quota, they had their hands cut off. And those hands were tied together and they were made to wear those hands as a warning to others, to make sure that they met that quota. They if they tried to escape, if they tried to escape, Christopher Columbus and them brought dogs, and they would sick the dogs on them to kill them, to hunt them down, to kill them, and to consume them. When those dogs, when they ran out of food to feed those dogs, you know what they fed those dogs? They fed them live Taino babies. That was dog food, live Taino babies, and that's a benefit. That's overlook everything else. Let's just overlook all those things and say that we're like, this is to our benefit. It's to our betterment that they came. No, it's not. You can't convince me otherwise, because you can't just overlook all the negative things that happened to get us to this point, because we would have gotten to this point through commerce and through advanced studies and stuff like that. We would have gotten to that point to begin with. It might not have been in the same way or to the same degree, but everybody that interacts with other countries, it's not just one country or two countries that automatically they're up here and everybody else is down here. There's interactions within countries. You look at today, automobiles are in every country in the world. We
True.
interact and we trade and things like of that nature. We would have advanced without all the negatives.
That's true. That's true. Otra vez, hermano. Here you go, dropping gems on the internet that people are gonna get a little bit tidfitty on, but it's not. It's not what's revealed in history. It's not there. But once you find out the educational systems are strategically giving you these folk heroes, these timbermen in the woods and all these other things, and you think that. Do you think should Chicanos identify more with the indigenous side or with the Spanish side?
My whole platform revolves around this. There's a flag. I'm gonna show you this flag. You've seen it on my videos, but let me show it to you because I'm in a motel right now, but I carry it with me.
And I know which one he's talking about right there. That's the orgullosamente.
It's this flag
That's
here,
right, hermano.
and this is
That's
this is
right.
my whole platform in a single symbol. This is showing the indigenous side, which has always been hidden behind or covered up by the nationalistic flag of Mexico. It's pulling away that flag and revealing what's behind, because so many of us have lost touch with that, because everything that we think about, everything that we're raised up in, the culture that we're raised up in, although it's a mixture of indigenous and Spanish and to some degree others, it's a mixture, but we're not taught that. We're not told that. It's Mexican. It's the Mexican culture. They don't tell you about that indigenous side that that's there, and there's a disconnect there. All you know is Mexican, and I said this in when we last spoke. It wasn't until I was 32 years old that I came to the understanding, or that at least it was brought to my attention, that Mexican is not an ethnicity. Mexican is a nationality, and you're either born in Mexico or made or have become a citizen of Mexico. Um, that's how you classify yourself as Mexican. We call ourselves Mexican because we have ancestral ties to Mexico.
True. Very, very true. That's right. Oh, Wayward Son, all you got to do is refresh the feed, carnal. Refresh the feed.
Okay. No, but that's what it is. So technically, if you want to get technical, most of us aren't Mexicans, if but for those ancestral ties, ties to a long gone person, a long gone relative, or ancestor that has since passed. But we're not Mexican citizens. We weren't born in Mexico ourselves. Maybe one of our grandparents or great grandparents were, but we're not. We still call
Hermano,
ourselves Mexican.
I saw a poll another channel was doing, and it said, "What do you call yourself?" And it said, "Mexican, American, Chicano, or something like that." And to be honest, when I was looking at that poll, the first thing that popped in my mind, I said, "But wait a second, I'm all of those." Do you think that that is possible, or was I just thinking something that's not possible? Because I'm like, wait a second, nací aquí. I'm also a dual citizen, so I have the Mexican birth certificate. I'm also first generation Chicano. I was scratching all those check marks. Is that? Do you think that's possible?
Yes, because see, I've had dual citizenship since 1982. So yeah, I can claim without any interference that I'm Mexican. I have dual citizenship. But when you look at it, because people are going to say I'm Mexican or they're going to say I'm American. Okay, both of those are nationalities. Neither one of those are an ethnicity.
Bloodlines, yeah.
Right, not bloodline. So what are you? Well, I'm Hispanic. No, that's not an ethnicity either. I'm Latino. That's not an ethnicity either. I'm Latinx. That is not an ethnicity. Who are you? Behind all that nationalistic identity, who are you? Who are your people? Where do you come from? Where are your roots? If you go to each one of these, they call themselves Mexican, you're gonna find yourself in a pueblo. You trace your genealogy, your lineage back to a certain point. It comes from a pueblo. And down there, one of the 68 different peoples down there in Mexico. There's actually more, but there's subgroups within those groups. But within those people, you're gonna find out who you are. I've done my genealogy, and on my father's side, I've traced my father's side back to 1745. On my mother's side, I think it's to 1824. But on my father's side, I traced it back to where he was 100% indigenous from a pueblo in Oaxaca.
I can see the features. Got it. I can see the features already on you. But now that you opened it up, I'm like, yeah, I can see the features on you. Now, you had mentioned something last time. You had said mitochondrial DNA. You made me go look it up because I didn't know, right? And I'm open to learning. I'm here to learn. I'm not here just to. Well, see, I want to learn all of us, all the Chicanos, all the raza that's with me. Gracias for the 10K we just hit, raza. We're all learning here. You had mentioned the mitochondrial DNA. I had read that it's dominant in the cells, but still the same information I'm seeing. Correct me if I'm wrong, because again, the real history, the real science, the real research, you're not going to find in the libraries. You're going to have to find them by researching on your own, by either going to the motherland or finding the scrolls or hearing it from an elder. Get the real truth, right? That it's still 50-50 the cells of the dad, the father, and 50 the cells of the mother. So both of those come into play and not one sex is dominant. Is that still your understanding on bloodlines? Because there's a lot of people that say if it's based on the dad, then it could change because they're mixed. The dad's one thing and the mom's something else.
Now, you're right to a point, but there is actually within the chromosomes, there's a different amount of DNA that comes from your mom. But here's the thing: mitochondrial DNA. It's a big thing, and they use it now. It's called the mitochondrial Eve. The reason that's a thing is because your matrilineal line is the only line that can come to you unbroken. your patrilineal line, which comes from your father, it's broken. It doesn't come to you unbroken. Um, that's why your lineage is based on your matrilineal line, because it's the only line that can come to you unbroken. And you can research this regardless of how much DNA you got from both of them. That patrilineal line, the line from your father, comes to you in broken pieces. That's just the way it is. The matrilineal line, that's why they have the matrilineal, the mitochondrial Eve, because it's the only line that will come to you unbroken. That's why your lineage follows you. That's why you hear the term, the motherland, because your matrilineal line comes through your mother, not your father, because your mother is the only one that can pass down mitochondrial DNA. Although we have it, I have it, you have it, it didn't come from your father. It came from your mother.
I'm trying to put that in layman's terms for the people, because a lot of the people are trying to wrap their heads around that. They're saying what Wayward Son, I believe, is saying is the dominant genes that don't ever change come from the mother. And so the word lineage could be looked as like your ancestry line. He's separating, Wayward is separating, nationalities from being where you were born, what that you're American, you're a Mexican. He's saying no, no, no. Now we're talking about more DNA, but you still agree it's still there's cells on both sides being mixed
Right.
together.
Yeah, you're gonna have you're gonna have DNA. You're gonna have, and I've always said this: the lightness of my skin, the color of my eyes, bear witness to the subjugation of my people. I can't deny that. Every time I look in the mirror, I don't. When you go down into Mexico and you see, I know somebody down there. She's 100% Mayan. She's from the Pueblo of Mayapan. I'll be seeing her in September. I go down there, and she speaks her indigenous language. She's from the Pueblo, and she's 100% Mayan. She is dark, dark, because she has a high percentage of indigenous blood. When you go down there, you know who's indigenous. You see it in them. You see, I mean, it's just there. It's you see it, and they're not this complexion. They're not though, but see, that's what a lot of people don't understand. Colonization didn't happen exactly the same across the board. Different peoples were colonized in different ways because not everybody were conquered, although they were colonized. For instance, one of the main examples that I always bring up is a Purepecha. The Purupecha, although they paid tribute to the Spanish, they weren't conquered in the same way as the Mexica. So the Purupecha, you'll find they have, some of them have 75, 85% indigenous blood, some 90. There are still over I think it's 2.4 million indigenous people in Mexico that are 100% indigenous, not 99, not 98, 100% indigenous. Not everybody was colonized to the same degree.
What do you think about this statistic that says over 300 tribes, over 60 something languages? Do you think that's close to what it was, or maybe it's way more expansive than that? You're trying to minimize it because we were the indigenous people were on the whole continent before Columbus or anyone.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of indigenous people, and they always try to. I just watched a video from some guy who posted it. I'm gonna have to respond to him. He was talking about how there was so many different, it was wide open spaces, and there was nobody there. So we can't, the Native Americans can't claim that their land was stolen. They wasn't occupying it to begin with, and that takes away from the whole nomadic peoples. They followed the game. They followed the buffalo. They traveled. They weren't just sedentary. They didn't just stay in one place. That's not to say that that land wasn't, theirs. They followed the land. But see, that's one of the things that bothers me about when people say this. We didn't have the same concept. We didn't own things in that way. It's not something you get. The ownership of the land is the white man's concept. We didn't see it that way. You could no more own the land than you could own the water, the air, the sky, the clouds. You couldn't own things in that way. Native peoples don't see that way. They're not the owners of the land. They are simply the caretakers of it. And that's one of the things that comes across when they speak on this. They write papers and they sign their name and draw lines and says this belongs to me. But I mean, that's what would you? I guess that's something we should expect from a people who say they went to the moon and planted their own flag on it. They'll lay claim to anything.
He's talking about the moon landing, el hermano.
Yeah,
Now he's
I
talking
mean,
about moon landing. So how do you believe anything, right? CGI, said Eddie Bravo with Joe
right, but
Rogan. Hermano, what do you know about this right here? Purepecha were more deadly than Aztecs.
the Purupecha was one of the tribes that the Aztecs could not defeat. They were a strong tribe. They fought. They fought to a stalemate, and they continued to fight. Matter of fact, when the Spaniards were conquering the Mexica actually went to the Purupecha to get them to to assist them, but they said no because of the conflict that they had with each other. Just like the Native Americans here in the United States who refused to, put aside their differences and come together to fight a common enemy. The same thing happened there with the Purupecha.
Hermano, which class was the best class of warriors? Was it the Jaguars or was it the Eagle Society?
Well, according to what the Mexica have written, the Jaguars, and they were like the elite, and they were even separated from everybody else. When you're in different classes, because they had different classes. I had somebody ask me because I traced my bloodline. I am both Winza and Nawa, and Winza, which people call Zapotec, but that's a Nawa word. That's not what my ancestors called themselves. It's Winza, but they had that. There are so many different bloodlines that fought and fought mightily. But somebody asked me, well, since you've traced your ancestry, you know who you are, your lineage, you know who your people are you going to let your hair grow long? Well, see, our people didn't. You see, you're mixing that up with Native Americans because our people didn't grow their hair like in that way. Not most of them had it shoulder length, but there was also different hairstyles depending on who you were. If you was a warrior, if you was a priest, if you was a commoner, you just they had different hairstyles, and most of them were like shoulder length long, or had like they had their hair up and bangs and stuff like that cut short. And they even see. I had somebody say that Aztec or Mexica didn't grow hair, who couldn't grow facial hair. They actually did, but they plucked it. They plucked what little hair that they could grow because it was seen as unclean. So they plucked any hair that they had if they did grow some. But you can actually see statues or carvings where they have like a beard. Some of them have beards, and a lot of people don't know that because they say we couldn't grow hair. There are actual carvings and stone sculptures where you'll see beards on them.
I heard a comment one time. Someone commented and he said this, and it was the funniest thing. Tú ya sabes cómo hablan los chicanos, right? Con mamadas. The one guy commented to another. He goes, "Pendejo." He goes, You're talking about Aztecs. Your ancestors probably fought them."
Yeah,
O
see, and
sea,
that's
we
the
don't
thing.
know because the thing is like Aztecs are put on a pedestal aside other tribes.
Absolutely, and that's what happened during the Chicano movement. You had when people started, wanting to trace back into their ancestry, look back into who they actually were, because that was one of the big questions within the Chicano movement. Because the Chicano movement made up a lot of different things. It was a civil rights movement. It was a political movement. It was a social movement. It was a social. It was a search for an identity, anti-assimilation. There's so many different things that came together during the Chicano movement. But when our people started looking back and asking who are we, because as you know, one of the main phrases from the Chicano movement was "ni de aquí ni de allá." We weren't accepted by those who were here with us on this land, but neither was we accepted from the land that we left behind. We were too brown for the white man and too wannabe white for the Mexicans in Mexico. So when they started searching for their identity and started going back into history, they gravitated towards the Aztec, towards that culture. So everybody started taking on Aztec names, started learning Nahuatl, started, embracing that
Yeah.
at the expense of all the true history, all the others that are, all the other cultures that are there, and there are many.
And there are many, just like you said. Yeah. That's something that's just fascinating. I'll tell you that. You know, you're speaking about Chicano. Have you ever heard this? I heard this said one time. It said that Chicano, the word Chicano, actually comes from a person, and Chicano is actually a bloodline rather than a term that was meant to be applied to first generation Mexican Americans. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, and there's nobody actually can prove one way or another because there's like four or five different, um, I guess you could say, quasi legitimate, claims to that word, and where it came from. Because you have some that even say, and a lot of people don't realize this either. It's not Mexico, it's Mexico. When the Spaniard came here, they had no letter for the sh sound in Mexica, so they replaced it with an X. They put an X, and so Mexico became Mexica, and you'll see that written in a lot of books, Mexica, along with Aztec or Mexica,
I've seen that
and
tattooed a lot.
yeah, and Mexico is Mexico. Mexicano is Mexicano, but they didn't have a letter for the sh sound in Mexica, so they replaced it with an X. So so when you get Mexica, or like when it started, because in the Spanish language you have both male and female, Latina or Latino. So when that came out, you have Mexicano or Mexicana. So a lot of people say, oh, well, it came from that Mexicano, Chicano, Mexicana, Chicana, but I mean, there's several different versions of where it came from, and nobody actually,
And everyone has a different source, and we don't know
yeah,
what's going on, but
absolutely,
I understand it as just the traditional sense, but I always question things. I don't know. I just don't want to believe anything I'm getting fed anymore, knowing I came
no,
up in a system and was looking at things a certain way, and all the history, especially all the native history. I was talking about this, hermano. Have you on another podcast? I was watching a documentary about the boarding school tragedies, and that they still have over 120,000 children in these boxes that they don't know what to do with the remains. And you know how indigenous or natives look at remains that are not at home, so they're not resting. And someone else had commented while I was on that live feed and said it's even sacrilegious to put holy things that are native and indigenous that no one is ever supposed to see. And these things, like the headpiece of Montezuma, well, I'm not saying that, but there's other holy things that are in other countries. Should we be demanding those things back, you think, hermano? And I'm sorry if I asked like three
no,
questions in one.
absolutely, because right now, today, as I'm speaking to you, there are over 100,000, and you can look this up, over 100,000 remains of Native Americans in universities, in museums. They're all out there. And these are the remains of people's ancestors. I read a book a long time ago, and I can't remember the name of the book for the life of me. But here, the book, it was a short story, and what it was there was an anthropologist, and a Native American tribe went to her requesting the body that she was studying, that she had dug up from their burial grounds. And she said, well, we're looking into the history. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And they said, well, we know our history. If you want to know about us and our history, come to us and we'll speak. She says, yes, but there's a lot of things that have been lost, that has even been lost to you, over time. And she goes, look, I'm not trying to disrespect your culture. We do it exactly like this. We do it this way, this way. It's very, professional. We do it in a professional manner with respect to the. I mean, we're really careful. We don't just go in there just digging away. We're, with little brushes, and she says, look, if you study this book, which I have written, you'll understand the process that we do to go about this. So he takes the books and his tribe leaves. About He comes back, but she's not available because her grandmother passed away. So she went to her. I mean, yeah, her grandmother passed away, so she went to the funeral. So he reads the book and he studies on it a long time, and he comes back about a month later, and she's there and she's working again. He comes up to where she's working. He says, "Look, I read your book and now I understand what you're talking about. She says, I understand that there are some things that are lost to us that a lot of us just don't understand. But now that I see the process that you use to go about doing what you're doing, I see you do it, with honor, you do it with respect. Now, my people, we have someone that we'd like answers about because it's something in our history that we have no clue about. And you being a professional, we'd like to ask you if you would examine these remains and let us know a little bit more about this. And she said, okay, well, bring them in. So they brought it in and they unwrapped, they let it on the table with her, and she started to unwrap it. And when she finished it unwrapping, she started screaming. They had dug up her grandmother and took her grandmother's body to her. And they said, see, now do you understand where we're coming from? Because the people that you dug up is somebody's grandmother, great grandmother, great great grandmother. It's somebody's relative, somebody's family, somebody's ancestor. You will never understand what we go through and the pain, the suffering that we go through. You need to stop doing what you're doing.
And in
That
the
book,
Estados Unidos will look at that like, o sea, the Estados Unidos will probably would thinks this, right? Like, you know what, our systems are the systems. We have the best systems, and that was the way that they were able to take the land, right? Wasn't this in the writing of everything when they started creating titles and properties, like you said? Now they
yeah.
own the minerals in the soil and everything on the ground, and they started, putting everyone inside reservations, the natives and all that. They thought the same mentality, but they actually came, correct me if I'm wrong, under the banner of God, entitlement that God, how did they, what was in their mind as far as using religion as a cloak?
Well, religion, because they were, the what is it? Document of discovery. They were given the okay by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church gave them okay to do what they're doing. They conquered, subjugated, raped, and murdered in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. They were given the okay to do so by the Catholic Church. They actually had to ask for permission before they did the things that they did at that time because the Catholic Church was so powerful, and they got the permission to do that. I was just up here about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I was up in the Black Hills. I was up in the Black Hills setting up a teepee. The video's inside my
Was that was the first time we had to reschedule? You had an incident, and I never told you about that. You said they were trying to come in on some mining fields of a friend's property.
There's it's the Oglala, the Oglala Lakota Sioux Reservation, and they're doing some lithium mining up there, illegal lithium mining on the reservation. And so we went up there and set up teepees. I had a Dakota brother ask me if I would, join the fight, and I said yeah. So I went up there. I met an Apache brother up in Wyoming to pick up, the chainsaws and everything we needed to go cut the poles to set up the teepee on the territory where they were going to mine. And we did
That's a
that because
lot of work.
oh, it's I grew. I mean, I have a lot. I already had a lot of respect for Native Americans, but to do that without the modern day tools that we were using to do it, man, to do it the way they did it is incredible. But
But
here's the
there
thing.
was, so they were trespassing.
See, here's this is the white man's way. They made a treaty, and like what you were just talking about. Let's say Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore is on the reservation. It's on the Greater Sioux
Yeah,
Reservation.
yeah.
Here's what happened. They made it. I think it was the Fort Laramie Treaty. They made a treaty with the Sioux and said, okay, you know what? The Black Hills are yours. You can have the Black Hills. This is yours. All this is yours. General Custer, the same General Custer who was defeated at Little Bighorn, he discovered gold there in the Black Hills. And I mean, like months after they had signed the treaty hadn't even, the ink hadn't even
Right,
dried yet.
right.
They discovered gold there. So what they did is they started reoccupying that land. Everybody, you know how the gold rushes go, everybody's coming in and nobody left. That land is still their land by treaty. But now you have Sturgis, you have Mount Rushmore, you have all these things that are within that land. They're all illegal. But here's what the government did. Here's what the Supreme Court did.
They'll
When
make
it
a
went to
law.
the Supreme Court, they said, you know what? You're absolutely right. This is your land. The treaty says this. You're 100% right, but we're not going to give it back. Instead, we're going to compensate you for it. Here's a few $1,000,000. Take this money, and we're going to go ahead and keep this land. They said, no, we don't want that money. We want back our land. The treaty says that's our land. You just said that we're right. It is our land, but they won't give it back. So now that original money that they put in for them in escrow, it's up to like $1 billion. But the reservation refuses to take it. But the white T man, he doesn't care. He's going to continue because he wants the minerals in that land that's on that property. So he's going to continue to do what he's doing, and that's what they're doing right now. Today, as we speak, they're up there mining
O sea,
inside the Black Hills.
it just continues. What's been happening now for centuries, it just continues one way or another. There was a lot of Spanish paintings that were depicting indigenous natives as fierce savages. There was writings about this. Then we have películas, and all they show is the sacrifices and the sacrifices. They try to depict life without the colonization as horrible. That's not what was true, right?
It's absolutely false. And if you actually went into the history, you would see this. Not to say that there wasn't human sacrifices, but there was also human sacrifices in the Bible, in their Bible. They call them burnt offerings. If you want to get technical, Jesus Christ himself was a human sacrifice. So now let's go back to the things that they said. What a lot of people don't understand, what a lot of people, when they're reading through this, they don't take into consideration that of the 502 codices that you read speaking on the Aztecs, 500 of them were written by the Spaniards. There's only two codices that exist right now today that refer to the Aztecs, not the Mayans. I'm talking about the ones that refer specifically to the Mexica. Only two out of the 502, only two of them are pre-conquest. All the rest, they came in there and they burned all of our history. They burned all of our books, all of our knowledge, and then they rewrote it. Now, even the codices, if you go to the Codice Mendoza or the Codice Florentine, you will see that it's written on Spanish in one side and in Nahuatl on the other. So they were interpreting what the Spaniards said to say. And not only that, but those people who wrote it, even the Nahuatl people who wrote it, they were trained by the Jesuits. They were trained by the Franciscan friars. They were raised up in that in Catholicism and trained by the Franciscan friars, and they wrote that history. But they rewrote our history. That's not our history. They teach you about all this. Yes, there was human sacrifices, but the sacrifices weren't what they said it was. They used to sacrifice 2 to 6 people every 20 days. Why would they do that? Because according to the Aztec calendar, the months were broken up into 20 days, 16 months of 20 days. But I had you see that in their own writing, they say, and one of the guy that I was tagged in his video because he made a video saying, oh, that they were savages. They killed 80,000 people in 5 days in commemoration for the Templo Mayor. They killed 80,000 people in 5 days. Well, actually, it was 84,000 in 4 days is what they said, right? 84,000 in 4 days. And so I asked him, have you ever thought to do the math? Have you ever thought to do the math? Because I'm just going to go with his version because he said 80,000 in 5 days, but it's actually 84 and 4. But if you go with the 85,000 in 5 days, divide it. 80,000 in 4 days is how many? That's 16,000 people a day they would have had to done in 5 days. 16,000 people a day, 24 hours a day. They would have had to kill, 166 people per hour. They would have had to, when you break it all the way down, they would have had to have sacrificed one person every 5 seconds, one person every 5 seconds, 24 hours a day without pause for 5 days straight.
I've
The
heard
math
those
don't
numbers.
match.
I've heard those numbers. I've definitely heard those numbers. You're right about that. I wanted to ask you, man, there's actually two things. One was actually about that, but I want to something else that keeps popping up in my head, hermano. I want to see if you can enlighten us on a centerpiece part of the Mexican culture, which is La Virgen de Guadalupe. And a lot of people don't know past to, like you said, we're all created in educational systems. We're all indoctrinated, whether it was in the US or Mexico. All we know is US history, the way they taught it to us. And all we know is Mexican history. And what we're talking here, ancestry, native, indigenous, the history of the country before colonization, they don't teach us at all because there's a lot of details they want to leave out. Massacres and everything else. Can you explain to the people where this whole the Virgen de Guadalupe came upon? What are the origins of that?
Juan Diago, first of all, Juan Diago, who said he had the vision, or he saw, he never existed. That was a falsehood that was taught. He never even existed. There was no such person as Juan Diago. This was made up by the Catholic Church because they were trying to bring. They knew that in order to bring over the indigenous people who were still practicing their indigenous ways over to the Catholic Church, they had to do something because one of the places that they were practicing on, one of the people that they was worshiping was Tonatzin, and Tonatzin was the Earth Mother goddess of the Mexica, and there was a certain hill on which they worshipped her. They would go up there, they would gather around to worship her, Tonatzin, up on this hill. Well, guess where Juan Diago just happened to have had that vision on that very same hill. Guess where they did the whole statue of the Virgen de Guadalupe on the exact same hill. They used that to try to pull away people who they said were practicing paganism, and there was anti Christian or Catholic, to pull them away from that religion. But there's so many things within the Catholic Church, within the Catholic religion, that the indigenous people incorporated, but they didn't completely, adhere to it. That's why if you go to the Catholicism in Mexico is not the same as Catholicism in Spain. You have the indigenous aspects within that religion, but those that who you call or who they call the Virgen de Guadalupe is actually um, it's Tonatzin, but it was poisoned and twisted in a way to bring people over to the Catholic Church. But we knew who it was originally, and people still continue to practice it to this day. The people who know that who they're actually worshiping.
Okay, yes, okay. So at first I thought you were saying this is un ídolo that they just drew up in order to appease the people or something like that. But you're saying it did come from a female deity,
Yes, Tonatzin, which was the Earth Mother goddess of the Mexica.
and she wore similar garments as what I saw. O sea, the greens and the same kind of color tones. And
There's a
so
Yeah, there's
so
there's a lot of different there's a lot of things within the that because it actually the Virgen de Guadalupe actually comes before that. They just used it in place because that comes from further back in Catholicism, but they just put it in place in that vision because Juan Diago never existed. At the time, the people who lived there and who were there at the time, they never said anything about it. Matter of fact, that story didn't come out until years after they said it took place. They're saying the vision took place here. Well, they didn't speak about it for 100 years afterwards, and then they started, bringing it out, bringing the story. Well, this is what happened. It happened back then, and these people, saw the vision and stuff like that because they did that in a way to where nobody could actually question it. Because if they said it happened yesterday, people were going to, well, hey, let me talk to so and so, but they waited till those people that were supposed to have been involved in it were already passed. So they spread that lie, and people continue to spread it to this day. But I've had somebody ask me to say, well, you shouldn't talk negatively about Roman Catholicism because 80% of Mexico, um, you know, considers themselves or at least identifies as Roman Catholic. I think you're asking the wrong question. I think you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. I don't want to hear that 80% of Mexico identifies as Roman Catholic. I want you to ask why. they identify as Roman Catholic. Where did Roman Catholicism come from? Why is it that they identify that way? Because that religion was pushed down our throats. As a matter of fact, and the reason I speak so much about Roman Catholicism is because everybody in here that has a Mexican or Spanish surname, Gonzalez, Martinez, Hernandez, Castro, Garcia, all of these names, who do you think gave them to you? It wasn't Hernan Cortez. It wasn't the conquistadores. It was the Catholic Church. Because
Oh, yeah.
you spoke about it. You spoke about the indigenous boarding schools, and we always hear about those, the Indian training schools. Indigenous boarding schools did not start in the United States. It started in Tenochtitlan, Mexico. The indigenous boarding schools did not start in the United States. It started in Mexico in Tenochtitlan, Mexico. The first boarding school, I think it was in 1547. I could even I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but what it was when they formed that very first indigenous boarding school in Tenochtitlan, Mexico. It was formed in order to strip the children of the nobility, the Mexican nobility, to strip them of their language, their heritage, their culture, their religion, to strip the exact same thing that they put into place against the Native Americans here in what we now call the United States, started off down there and worked its way up here. They had hundreds of years to practice it on us before it even came this way.
Chingado. We got the original pilot program under Spanish rule given to us. And in that way, when it hit over here in like the 17th or 18th, 19th century, they already had the blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard this. I heard that they were, not, they were forcing parents to send their kids, whether que querían o que no, by even keeping rations of food away from them, which is starving the people in order to unprogram them from everything they knew.
And not only they did that, and this is really messed up, but this is how it happened. When they took them away from their families and put them in these indigenous boarding schools, they released them back to their families. Not like, okay, there you go. No, they sent them back to spy on their families and to report back to the Catholic Church, to the Franciscan friars, who was doing what, who was whispering, who was like, bringing people together and still practicing their religion or their culture. And these children did that. They came back and did this. They sent them into different societies, into different places to become the leaders in the church, to become the leaders in the labor forces in this way. That way they could keep an eye on everybody and report back to the church.
Híjole. No, I'm telling you, hermano. Jeez, Wika. That's the true history. Again, you're not going to find in the library, gente. We're coming up. We got a couple more minutes left. There's a lot of questions. I can't even begin. There's probably going to have to be a part 3. I know it's late over there. We're going to end this on time. But thank you again, hermano, for coming on and all the information that you gave. We talked about La Virgen. We talked about colonization. We also talked about Mexican, hermano. So what I said about being Chicano, Mexican, and American, eso se puede ser. I feel que sí se puede. And I feel they're just trying to really box us in. The whole thing is just about putting labels on cans. And really that's what it is, right? Because somos gente, somos raza.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of different parts to who we are, and because of that colonization, I mean, there's not a single. You don't build a house with one brick. You don't build a house with one piece of sheetrock or one shingle. There's a lot of things that go into to that home, and there's a lot of things that go into who we are. All the experiences that not only we've experienced ourselves and the road that we've traveled, but those that have come before us. Our fathers, our grandfathers, and grandmothers, and everybody else. They've all experienced so many different things. There are so many different branches to your family tree that, yeah, that we're an amalgamation of a lot of things.
I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. I think there's going to have to be a part 3 in the future. There was an interesting question that was asked. I don't know if you have another minute.
I'm sure.
What, hermano, the creation, what were native indigenous gente taught about the creation? Obviously, they didn't have the word Christianity, the beginning of time. If you look on YouTube and you look on different books, when they say the creation, there's so many things that I don't know what do you know as far as, or is this just every single tribe had different elders and had different stories and different cuentas, and it's not streamlined the way it is with Christianity, the creation story?
No, it's not. Our creation stories are all different. It's different by pueblo. It's different by tribe. One tribe might believe a certain thing, and the other tribe believes a different way. Let's take, for instance, my grandfather's side, which is Zapotec. They call it's Winsa, or cloud people. They believe they came from the clouds, and that's just them. Now, when you go to other people, they believe, like, let's say the Mexica, that they came from a cave where all seven different Nahuatl speaking tribes came from. We all came from the same cave. There were seven different caves within a greater cave, and they were the last to have gotten here. All the other ones left before that and came here. Well, came down to the to Mexico Tenochtitlan, down there to central Mexico. But they all came from the same area. This was their creation. This is where they originated. And but every single tribe has a whole different. I mean, there are so many different stories within the nations.
Okay.
And even within certain bands of the nations, they have different versions of their creation story.
And someone asked, did the tribe Mexica come from a person named Meshi?
Meshi is actually another name for Huitzilopochtli. Meshi is another name for Huitzilopochtli. Huitzilopochtli, who is also called Meshi, renamed the Azteca, because that's what they originally were called, was the Azteca. And it wasn't called Aztec; they were called Azteca. But during the migration, Meshi or Huitzilopochtli changed their name to the Mexica because he said that they were his chosen people, and so he renamed them Mexica. Which, yes, Huitzilopochtli another name for him is Meshi. So that's where
Which
the name comes from.
would turn into the tribe Mexica, which ultimately is the way the Spanish gave the name. Is this correct? The Spanish gave the country of Mexico its name from that tribe?
Well, because it was called Tenochtitlan Mexico, and like I was mentioning before, it was called not just Tenochtitlan, it was Tenochtitlan Mexico, and because the Spaniard didn't have a letter for the SA sound in Mexico, he replaced it with the X. Mexico became Mexico.
There it
So
is, you guys. I've already dropped enough rapid fire questions on mi hermano. There's going to have to be a part 3. Hermano, gracias. Godspeed to you. God bless you and the family. Enjoy the summer. There's going to be great feedback left on this video. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link to the TikTok and everything else that you have. You just text it over to me. And gracias. I appreciate your time one more time. You guys, we're live on Chicano
thank
Tube,
you.
live on Chicano Street. The voice for Chicanos here with mi hermano Wayward Son 360. And we're out, you guys. The most important thing that I always say at the end of every video, though, the most important thing that I always say in the end, all you got is the memories.
Absolutely.